What saddens me is the Europeans have got more respect for us. Stop this inferiority complex.
Patrice Motsepe getting irritated with African journalists ahead of the AFCON final. Find out later on what the CAF president was responding to, and we'll get an assessment from Morocco. Hello, welcome again to Sport Unlocked. To listen to Tariq Panja from the New York Times, Martyn Ziegler from the Times, and myself, Rob Harris from Sky News. But as well as subscribing on all your pod platforms, if you go to YouTube or TikTok, as about 5,000 people did in the last week, you can watch some clips of us.
5,000? That's quite a lot, actually. I wish I hadn't been wearing my headphones, but there we go.
We have some dynamic pricing in our future here.
We can do a whole episode on the algorithm and how, despite having few followers, we still managed to get seen by so many, and without needing any betting on it either.
Oh, well, is that an opportunity that we've not yet accessed? We could stream the podcast on various illegal betting websites,
or legal ones too. And in a first for FIFA, they are now going in on betting big officially.
So they've got a new deal with a data company, Stats Perform, which is not unusual, but I suppose the betting side of it is perhaps for FIFA. It's not an official betting partner like UEFA has, but it is a partner which provides data for the betting industry. And what's going to happen for the World Cup is people will be able to get low quality streams of matches on betting websites.
People will be wondering what was different before, because if you are a bettor and you go online at the World Cup in the past, you see these odds, you see live betting on World Cup games. So what makes this different?
Well, I did find a few years ago, someone high up I'd been discussing betting with at FIFA and pointed out the fact that betting companies have all these odds on World Cup matches, but maybe FIFA isn't making money then out of them, and as FIFA would say, that money goes back into football rather than it being all on the outside. Yet people might be seen as exploiting the World Cup.
The other thing about having a sort of a bona fide data company is that I'm not talking about FIFA's competitions, but more broadly on smaller countries, their national team competitions in which betting can take place, is that there is more reliability for the betting industry that this is genuine data, no one's fiddling it. So I think FIFA say that they're going to try and make this data company available to smaller national associations as well, which will help them out and be more credible.
Not more XG and everything like that, is it?
I don't think so. I think I think it's actually just basically being a credible source of who scored what goal and what that means, who got booked when and what that means.
But you can get disputes. This week, Manchester United appointed Michael Carrick as manager until the end of the season. But one of the British betting companies was pointing out to those who had a bet on him being the next permanent manager that he's the interim. They're claiming they shouldn't be paying out because actually he's the interim, even though United aren't calling him interim. Bet365, that one.
Well, betting companies, they're not obliged to pay out. It's at all. It's basically an agreement between a bettor and a betting company, but there's no legal obligation for them to pay out on anything. So, which is always worth bearing in mind. I thought it was interesting that FIFA is allowing betting websites to stream World Cup matches, even if it is low quality, because they do have rules which have been in place at least since 2012 that no one involved in football is allowed to bet on football.
Yeah, so this is in their ethics code, and it's pretty detailed, where it has a strong stance against betting from the football industry. But again, this is a case of, well, it's happening, let's profit from this. We talked about dynamic pricing with the tickets related to the World Cup, and the FIFA's rationale for that, at least part of it, was, well, America has a legal resale market, and we talked about how much they're sweating that. And we have this, and they're not the first. The Premier League, for example, it has a data partner. All sorts of leagues have data partners. There's 3 big companies. I think there's Genius Sports, StatsForm, the one FIFA has a partnership with. I think Sport Radar as well offers this service, and it is a multi-million-dollar income stream for these governing bodies.
And maybe an income stream for particularly some of the smaller domestic leagues, because the announcement said that this deal will also grant exclusive betting rights to thousands of matches per season across FIFA member association competitions powered by FIFA Plus. So those domestic competitions being streamed on FIFA Plus, we've questioned where the value is perhaps in there. Do you really want to watch, let's say, a minor league? Everything is so focused on some of the big European leagues in particular. Well, perhaps an incentive is to watch a smaller competition is you'll have a bet on it.
Well, it raises also the question of those smaller competitions having bets in them. What does that do to integrity? Does it increase the risk of match fixing? Now you can have all of these bets on these leagues, and I suppose the other element of this is, yes, this data goes out to legitimate bookmakers, but it also has been known to power the illicit gambling market as well. So I wonder what guardrails there are. I mean, another question would be nice to ask someone from FIFA in person in a dialogue of some kind.
No messaging yet from FIFA around the responsibilities around gambling, ensuring that you don't gamble what you don't have.
No, but it's not an actual betting company partner. So if this was an actual betting company, I think they would be duty bound to do that. But perhaps because it's not, then FIFA feels that there is no need to do that.
Elsewhere in FIFA this week, big announcement on World Cup tickets. They now say there's 500 million requests that are being received for tickets for the tournament this summer. No precise details of the ticketing breakdown per country. 500
million is a lot. Do you think there's 500? I wonder how many individual people that is. I mean, that's talking.
1 in 14 people on planet Earth.
I was going to say a 14th of the world's population, but obviously some are trying to get more than one ticket. But at the same time, that is a huge number, whichever way you look at it. It'd be interesting to have a break. It'll be fascinating to see what the crowds are actually like at the World Cup and how much people have paid. I mean, I did notice this, just an example about how much people in the US are prepared to pay to watch sport. That just for a college sports match this week, parking was for just this match was being advertised at like $500.
Yeah, I think that same game, the college football playoff match this weekend, I read a story that said the nosebleed tickets are available at $3,500. I don't know who these. I mean, these people must be loaded. America has a lot of rich people. But back to the World Cup ticket situation. Rob mentions 500 million ticket applications announced by FIFA. They're celebrating that. Everyone wants to go to this thing. But then when you talk to fans of national teams, you're not seeing that demand. So knockout games for some of the big countries in Europe, the availability of tickets remains more than the demand. So I'm not sure how to square all of these things.
Obviously, lots of people requesting, maybe for some of the bigger matches, an obligation to buy is there from making these requests. And I suppose it feeds back into FIFA talking about the benchmarking of ticket prices, because if you perhaps set them too low, then more people might just go and flood the market to buy them up, because you can resell them legally in the United States.
Yeah, and FIFA have talked about that. So they've said, you know what, we're going to take it, we're going to run with it, and we're going to be the reseller, getting 15% from the buyer, 15% from the seller, and they're going to make bank from it. You know, we've got a tournament here in AFCON with tickets on sale as well. They were criticised in the past for having tickets that were too expensive. They have pretty reasonably priced tickets in the local context as well as the international context, and some of the resale tickets have been really expensive. However, in the group stages, I read a report on the Agence France Presse news agency saying that after 20 minutes, they just opened the gates to let fans fill the seats in for free, because that backdrop is a bit embarrassing for a future World Cup host. So, there's quite a lot of nuance here when it comes to ticketing.
And there is, this explanation that this is what the market is like in the USA, I think has been put into sort of fairly sharp context by Los Angeles 28 Olympics, who this week announced their first ticket sales window. There's going to be a lottery, but they say that there's going to be 1 million tickets priced at £20 or $28, and there's going to be 2 million more priced at less than $100, which is £74. And so that's out of a total of 14 million. Now, we don't know what sports they are, but
how many of those for the early matches in rugby sevens or cricket games?
And football.
Well, I tell you what, the rugby sevens was sold out at Paris, and that was
in a rugby market.
In a rugby market, yeah. But I mean, I think it's they were very, very difficult to get hold of those tickets. But generally, I just obviously there is football as well in the Olympics, and those are the tickets which traditionally are hardest to sell. But it just shows to me, and they've made the organisers have made a big show about this. I mean, Casey Wasserman, the LA28 chairman, saying, "We've been clear from the beginning. Access to these games because these games belong to everyone. These games have to be affordable and inclusive." And their chief executive said something like, they've already had 150,000 people sign up to be volunteers at the games. So they have got high demand, but they're not going to. It looks like they're not going to try and exploit that too much.
And no dynamic pricing as well.
Not for the first round of ticket sales. They haven't ruled it out for future rounds. So let's see on that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there is an element of that, but let's see.
And if you get a 100 metres final ticket, you can flog it on a resale market legally in the US, can't you?
Well, maybe FIFA can do it for them. Maybe FIFA can say you can borrow our platform here. We've caned it. Why don't you guys have a go? And that language though, why are they not as aggressive then as FIFA in terms of saying, well, this is America, this is the market, secondary sales are part of the norm. Let's make as much money as we can because this is America. Why are they not doing that then?
Or maybe they genuinely believe that they need to be affordable, and they want to try and get people who aren't going to sort of mortgage their house in order to go and watch a sports event to come along. I mean, the other sort of distinction to make is that ticket income is just about is the major source of income for LA28 organising committee. They get to keep that. None of the World Cup tickets goes to local organisers. That all goes to FIFA, and I think they think that's going to be something like $3.3 billion. So that no local organisers in the US are going to see any of that.
We do have an Olympics before then, beginning next month in Italy, the Winter Games. And there has been news this week of the death of a guard at a construction site in Cortina during an overnight shift in freezing conditions of -12 centigrade. He died of a heart attack, a tragedy that is being investigated by local organisers. And something we do try and show awareness of and discuss on this pod is the coverage around the world. We know the death of a worker in some other countries might get more attention than this one is.
Yeah, I think you're alluding to the coverage around Qatar and the workers there. This one, having looked at it, I'm struggling to report this out beyond saying a man who is 55 years old, who also happens to work as a security guard at the Winter Olympics and is 55 years old, has died of a heart attack. Until more details come out, it's very hard to say this man who works in cold weather died because he's working in cold weather. And I think that would be really irresponsible, to be honest, to do that. That's I think, the difference here. And once this full investigation that the Infrastructure Minister, Matteo Salvini's called for, is complete, that's all the facts next to each other rather than related to. Qatar is very, very different. We had multiple people working in very, very, very uncomfortable conditions, extreme heat. We had multiple people collapsing and a number of deaths of fit young men. And I think that's the difference, at least as far as I'm concerned.
There was a death actually in the London 2012 Olympics. A crane operator died there in June 2011. I think it was like famous at the time for that, had 0 construction fatalities. But actually, it was ruled as being a heart attack, wasn't work related. So it will be interesting to see. Obviously, very sad for the family of the guy who's died in Italy. But it's one we should definitely keep an eye on.
News this week of a future Olympics, the 2038 Winter Games, which Switzerland is bidding for unopposed. They've announced that the alpine skiing will be in Montana, a place I was at tragically a few weeks ago, reporting the general news side on the awful New Year's Day fire.
That must have mixed emotions for that particular town, because obviously what everyone associates it with now is this terrible tragedy.
Yeah, and this Swiss bid, this will be multiple clusters again, like what we're going to see in Italy with Milan, Livigno, and Cortina. And what's going to be interesting with all of these European bids is costs and infrastructure mean they're all going to be quite bitty, and this is something that the Winter Olympics, certainly in Europe, is going to be now. I think it's not going to be a heavy spend, massive event.
Another massive event, the African Cup of Nations. It started just before Christmas. It's finishing as we record in Morocco. And a big part of that event, unlike some other parts of football, the boss giving a long press conference. Patrice Motsepe spoke at length before the tournament started. And now, on the eve of the final in Rabat, he spoke for an hour and 44 minutes at a news conference. And it got a bit spicy at times. A lot of journalists asking about that decision to reduce the frequency of the African Cup of Nations from 2 years to every 4 years. The accusation is to placate international interest, particularly in Europe, with so many clubs concerned about losing their players to the tournament when it's held during the European season. And we heard a snippet at the start. Here's a fuller listen to what Motsepe had to say when he was challenged about that decision and criticism from Senegal ahead of the final about logistical arrangements, their hotel and security.
We've got to move away from this inferiority complex, where, FIFA controls Africa. What do you mean? You mean the Africans haven't got the capacity, or the AFCON every year is because of Europe? Absolute nonsense. Rubbish. What saddens me is the Europeans have got more respect for us than some of our own journalists do. And that's fine. The FIFA people have got so much more respect for us than some of our own journalists. But that's democracy and freedom of the press. But stop this inferiority complex. Stop the inferiority complex that Africans cannot say to anybody. They have to compromise as much as we have to compromise at times to accommodate the interests of football.
Well, we are turning sports and lots across now to the Africa Cup of Nations. Someone who's been there throughout, the journalist Yaw Ofosu. Yaw, thanks for joining us on Sport Unlocked. Unfortunately, your Ghana team didn't qualify, but gives you bigger perspective on the tournament. How's it been?
Well, it's been good. I think that this is one of the best AFCONs organization-wise that I've been to. And it is also a testament of how Morocco is hosting the World Cup very seriously. As someone from Sub-Saharan Africa, I think what this AFCON is missing, though, is a bit of the entertainment, a bit of the dancing and the singing in the streets and all of that. But generally, it's been a really good AFCON.
Do you get that singing then? Is it ensuring that fans aren't priced out, getting the locals more involved?
There was a concert in the city centre. It had some of Africa's biggest Afrobeat artists like Stonebwoy from Ghana and Burna Boy from Nigeria. And I think that it kind of like sparked a lot of interest from the youth. And sometimes, people don't particularly like the football, but they like everything around it. And I think, CAF needed to do a bit more just to rope them in and make sure that everyone is getting into the AFCON spirit. So
the big news from the start of the tournament was the fact you're going to have fewer AFCONs every 4 years rather than every 2 years. Some coaches critical, some believing CAF might have bowed to some pressure from Europe.
If I were CAF, I would have left it at 2 years because it makes it different from other competitions in other continents. And, to have a football competition here every 2 years is just trying to unite the continent, really. Because, if we are being very honest, the CAF Champions League and the CAF Confederations Cup, those club football tournaments that happen each year, does not particularly have a very strong African audience. That 2-year spirit, that 2-year interval between tournaments at the AFCON was one thing that particularly helped unite the sport on this continent. So to have a 4-year AFCON means that there are going to be players who could have a good patch in their first 2 years or their first 3 years, and they might not be able to play at an AFCON because by the time the next AFCON comes around, they might have either lost form or they might have just gone into oblivion or something like that.
Another journalist, Asasu Abayoana, he really took on Patrice Motsepe at that news conference. It was partly a speech giving his opinion before Motsepe gave quite a forthright answer back. Now, it all went on for about 7 or 8 minutes, so we've had to edit it down. But you still get a sense of a bit of the back and forth and what it was like there.
We do not understand why you think you should do this. Mr. President, this biennial competition is integral to the culture of Africa. And these are things which you feel should now be discarded to go the European way and every other way. Mr. President, from my conversations also with many in your community, FA presidents, even some members of your EXCO who may not tell you directly, they don't support this decision. They don't support it. And with good reason, because we do not see how this serves Africa, Mr. President.
Thank you. It's a very, very, very... Let's clap hands for that. Please clap hands for that. No, a bit louder, please. I've got people in CAF who say there's some journalists who they're trying to embarrass and disgrace, and they've got loyalties. Now, I don't care. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what you ask, and my duty is to respond to those. So it's not the president of CAF. It is the 54 nations in Africa who know football, I would say with all humility, much better than those who are not in the day-to-day involvement in the challenges about the infrastructure, the stadiums, and the money that we need to pay for the players. So we are absolutely satisfied. Where you are wrong, absolutely wrong, and your facts are incorrect. No, just keep quiet now. Keep quiet. Keep quiet. I asked you a question and I kept quiet, so don't interrupt me. Where you are also talking absolute nonsense is to say to me that we will run Africa for Europe. Absolute rubbish. It's nonsense. You're insulting us. We run Africa for Africa.
There's an interesting balancing act, isn't there, from
Yeah.
the scheduling point. The calendar's so packed, isn't it? The European Championships only every 4 years, World Cup only every 4 years,
Yep.
Asian Cup only every 4 years. But do you get the feeling actually Africa sees a lot of its stars go to other leagues, particularly to Europe, the Premier League, so you lose them from your own continent, the chance to see them playing in Africa? So that might be a reason why actually there is a need for an AFCON more often, even if you've got European clubs complaining about losing players for the tournament.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's for instance, someone like Mohamed Salah did not particularly play club football in Egypt, and so the Egyptian fans who the only time they can see Salah play is maybe at the AFCON or at World Cup qualifiers or when there's international break. But the thing about those international break games are that on the African continent, sometimes you come in for an international game and it's a game against Chad somewhere in Jamina, and there isn't too much TV coverage for that game. So you don't see that game. There's a game somewhere in Djibouti. You don't see that game. And so it is why I felt like every 2 years when there's a tournament that, countries can watch their stars and it's on TV and everybody, I felt like that was the feeling about the African Championship that made it really, really nice. Now it's going to take a while for African fans to see their stars and also to relate with them a lot more.
So what's the perception of Patrice Motsepe, how he's running the Confederation of African Football? Is he focused on African interests? Is he trying to balance out navigating those international relations and giving something so, CAF isn't in conflict with European clubs? How is he perceived as the leader and what he's been doing over the years?
I think that, it's been a split opinion, really. The women's AFCON prize money has increased. AFCON prize money has increased. The youth tournaments prize money has increased. There's been an African Schools Championship, which started in Accra just last year and is going to be going on every year, where there's a spot for younger journalists who are trained to become, great professionals and all of that. So on that scale, there's huge admiration for what he's doing, generally for how he has changed CAF and the kind of financial pump that he has given some of the countries and all of that. But then on the other hand, which is the general administrative problems around African football, administrative problems in the sense that the AFCON changed, the tenure from 2 years to 4 years. Then there was also an African Super League that was supposedly going to be introduced sometime later and all of that. That is where some Africans feel like Dr. Motsepe is probably pandering towards Europe a little too much. And also, we've seen a lot of pictures with him fraternizing with Gianni Infantino, and they're always together, really. And it's like they're best friends at this point. And so many people think that a lot of the changes we are seeing in African football with regards to the AFCON, with regards to every other thing we are seeing, is probably something that has been discussed behind closed doors between himself and the FIFA presidents. And so that is where a lot of Africans are not happy about. So look, it's not a general distrust in Dr. Motsepe's system. It's just that people feel like he could be doing better in terms of trying to keep Africa's football heritage a bit more pristine than what he's done. For the money, a lot of the countries need it, and so they are happy about it. A lot of the clubs need it as well, so they are particularly happy. But they feel like the other side of it, has to change a bit.
Probably pushing now to, you would hope, use those relations with Gianni Infantino to ensure that the 2030 World Cup final is in Morocco rather than Portugal or Spain.
That would be a tough one. But I think that it will be difficult for Morocco to get the World Cup final. The stadiums I've seen here are world class, really. But I'm also looking at the Santiago Bernabeu that was just done, which is like so good. And for them to have a World Cup final there will be huge. The Barcelona stadium is almost going to be completed as well. So they would have to. It will be a huge challenge to get the World Cup final here. But I don't know what's going to be. Maybe their friendship could end up in something nice. I don't know.
Thanks so much for joining us to reflect on the AFCON for Morocco.
Thank you so much.
And thank you everyone for listening and watching. Subscribe to us at Sport Unlocked on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all the social platforms, as well as your pod app as well. For now, goodbye.